Exposed. The incredible journey of a forgotten puppy who transformed heartbreak into hope. In the small town of Willow Creek, the sun was barely breaking through the heavy clouds when 10-year-old Billy stumbled upon a scruffy little puppy. Billy had already learned what it meant to carry the weight of the world on his small shoulders. His father had lost his job at the factory, and his mother was overwhelmed with worry. The joy of childhood had turned into a siren of responsibilities. But there at the edge of town, the hopeful yip of the abandoned puppy sparked a flicker of light in Billy's heavy heart. He reached down to scratch the pup behind its ears, feeling the ruffled fur beneath his fingertips. This scrappy little creature seemed to understand the silence that hung in the air at home, the tension that made Mom's laughter feel like a distant tune. As the puppy wagged its tail, Billy allowed himself a genuine smile, momentary forgetfulness washing over him. He named the puppy Max, and just like that, the pair became inseparable. With each day, Max brought Billy a taste of freedom, a chance to experience the carefree spirit of childhood that seemed all but lost. They raced through fields, chased butterflies, and even shared scraps of Billy's lunch. Each adventure was a reminder of what joy felt like. But when they returned home, the dark rain clouds would loom large again, with quiet dinners filled with whispers about bills and bank statements. Mom's eyes often swelled with tears, and repeat discussions were marred by stress. Billy felt like he was stuck between hunger and heartache. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But one fateful afternoon changed everything. While searching for Max in the woods, Billy stumbled across a chilling sight: a hidden dog-fighting ring. His heart raced as adrenaline mixed with horror. He had seen the bruised and battered dogs and felt the sickness twist in his stomach. The sinister dealings were hidden right under his very nose, threatening the life of his newfound friend. Conflicted, he choked on his next breath. Should he risk everything to save Max, or keep quiet to help his struggling family? That night, he lay awake, the image of the shaking pup wrapped in a dirty blanket blinking before his eyes. It was as if the world had shrunk to a singular focus: family versus friendship. In the coming days, Billy found an unexpected ally in his community. Neighbors shared hushed conversations about missing pets and rallied to protect the dogs. The warmth of solidarity sparked a flicker of courage inside him. Just as hope began to swell, the ominous call came through. Max had been spotted near the fighting ring. Billy's heart pounded in his chest. Time was slipping away, and as darkness crept closer, he stood at a crossroads between loyalty to his family and the love for his furry friend. What price would he pay for the hope that filled his soul? As the weight of his choice settled heavily on him, the question lingered in the air: could he embrace the courage needed to break free from despair? Billy's mind spun like a whirlwind, each thought colliding with another. He sat on his bed, the shadows dancing across the walls, echoing the turmoil within him. What if he did nothing? What if he tried and failed? The stakes felt impossibly high. While the world around him was clouded with doubt, the thought of Max, trembling and alone, kept him anchored. The next morning dawned gloomy yet alive with purpose. Billy slipped out of the house while his parents were still asleep, his heart hammering with excitement and fear. He patted the pocket of his worn jeans where a crumpled piece of paper lay: an address he'd scribbled from whispers he heard in town, a rumored meeting spot for those involved with the dog-fighting ring. With Max's name echoing in his mind, Billy didn't look back. He pushed through the tall grass, ignoring the biting chill that wrapped around him. Each step felt heavy with determination. He pictured Max's wild eyes, the way he sprinted back to Billy with hope in his tail. Somehow, in the midst of all this darkness, he found his resolve. Arriving at the secluded area, Billy peeked through the thicket of trees. The scene was worse than he imagined. In a makeshift ring, the sounds of barking mixed with shouts and thuds. Far from the bond he shared with Max, the place smelled of fear and despair. The reality hit him hard: these dogs were much more than fighters. They were victims like Max, stripped of all joy. As dread coiled around his stomach, Billy's heart raced again. But this time it was fueled by anger. He fought back the tears as he saw one dog, a white pit bull with a broken spirit, tremble in the corner. I can't let this happen, he whispered to himself, the urgency of his mission igniting a fire within him. Suddenly, the air shifted. A group of men, burly and rough, gathered round. They laughed loudly, boisterously, but beneath their bravado lay a stain of cruelty. Billy shifted from foot to foot, the weight of uncertainty trying to crush him. His instincts screamed at him to run. Gathering every ounce of courage he had, he stepped from the shadows, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice a small yet clear beacon in the chaos. The men turned, surprise etched on their faces. You can't do this." Quiet settled around him for a brief moment before laughter erupted. Billy gulped, clutching the piece of paper, hoping it would somehow imbue him with strength. For just a second he stood defiantly, but the laughter rang like hollow bells, echoing his deepest insecurities. Just then, a familiar yip pierced the tension, cutting through his fears. Billy's heart soared as he recognized the sound. With a flick of his eyes he followed it, and there was Max, trembling and wide-eyed but alive. The moment filled him with renewed hope, pushing him to break the silence more fiercely. "Max, come here." Billy's call was now filled with confidence. Max bolted toward him, tail wagging like a wild banner, effortlessly leaping into Billy's arms. The men froze, uncertainty flickering in their eyes, and Billy seized the moment. "You won, keep taking them." "Not anymore." The atmosphere became electric, charged with tension. Would they fight him? Would they laugh him off? As he stood firm, a new resolve blossomed within him, urging him to confront the reality of his choices. But just as uncertainty threatened to return, Billy felt a gentle tug at his shirt. Max looked up, his big eyes shining with an unconditional love that was too bright for even the darkest of clouds. What would Billy do now? He had come so far, but the fight was just beginning. Billy could hear his own heartbeat, drumming loudly like a war cry against the backdrop of the chaotic scene around him. The men, once laughing, now bristled with confusion, eyes flickering between Billy and Max. It felt like time stood still, each second stretching out like a taut rubber band ready to snap. "Get out of here, kid," one of the men finally barked, his voice gravelly and harsh. He took a step toward Billy, his figure looming menacingly. "This ain't no place for a boy. You need to scram." But instead of retreating, Billy stood his ground. He instinctively hugged Max closer, feeling the warmth of his fur seep into his skin. "No, you can't keep doing this to them," he shouted again, his voice trembling but filled with an urgency that surprised even himself. Max whimpered softly but remained steadfast against Billy's chest, sensing his owner's unyielding courage. In that moment, Billy wasn't just fighting for Max, he was fighting for every dog that had ever felt as lost and afraid as the pit bull trembling in the corner. His heart swelled with purpose, and he took a small step forward. "Max deserves better. They all do," he cried out, every word hanging heavy in the air. The laughter from the men faded, replaced now with a low murmur of uneasiness. He could see the doubt creeping into their expressions. They were used to their reign of terror, not a fearless boy with a loyal dog reminding them of their cruelty. It was a standoff, and Billy could barely believe he was in it. Another man, bigger and with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward. "You think you can stop us? We own these dogs. You think just because you shout a little we'll give them up?" His voice dripped with mockery, but something in his tone shifted, betraying a hint of fear. Billy's throat felt dry, but he couldn't let that uncertainty swallow him whole. He remembered the moments of joy with Max, the countless afternoons spent together chasing squirrels and lying on the grass. "You think this is ownership? This is just cruelty. You're not dogfighters. You're monsters." The men exchanged glances, and for the first time, Billy could see the weight of their actions reflected in their eyes. They weren't just caught off guard, they were unraveling. Sensing the change in the atmosphere, Billy pressed on with all his might. He couldn't go back now. "Let me take them," he pleaded, gesturing to the dogs around him. "You don't have to keep hurting them like this. They can find homes. They can be loved and cared for. I'll help them." His voice cracked a bit at the end, but the fire in his heart refused to waver. The men's bravado was crumbling, and he could see their hesitation ripple like a wave. "Yes, love. They need love. A voice from the crowd of dogs chimed in, surprising Billy. It was the white pit bull, finding its voice in the sea of fear. The other dogs joined in, barking and howling in unison, and it resonated deep within him. Billy was ready to fight not only for Max but for all of them. Would he be able to rally enough courage to change their fate? As he stared down the men, he felt Max nuzzle closer. And suddenly Billy knew love could be the most powerful weapon. Suddenly, a siren blared in the distance, creeping around the edges of their confrontation. A sliver of hope glimmered deep inside Billy's chest. The fight was escalating, and the thrill of possibility coursed through his veins. Would this moment be his turning point? Or could it lead to something even more terrifying? He felt the rush of time quickening again, the moment demanding a decision. Did he dare challenge their entire world? Let us do this. He shouted over the rising noise, bracing himself for whatever awaited them next. As he squared his shoulders, ready to embrace the unfolding chaos, he couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps, just perhaps, he was on the brink of something big, something that could change everything for Max and for all those forgotten. But then the men shifted as a new player entered the scene. Billy's heart dropped when he saw who it was, and uncertainty flooded back into his veins. Who had just walked in, and what would it mean for their fight? Billy's breath hitched in his throat as he recognized the newcomer. It was Sandro, the well-known dogfighter from a rival ring. He strode in like he owned the place, the shadows of his reputation darkening the atmosphere even further. The men around him went silent, their bravado faltering under Sandro's intimidating presence. So what's this? Sandro sneered, eyeing Billy with a disdainful smirk. A kid with a dog trying to save the world? Why don't you run along before you get in over your head? Billy clenched his fists, every ounce of courage fighting against the fear that threatened to grip him. This was no longer just about standing up to the men in the alley. It was about facing Sandro, a figure whose very name sent shivers down the spines of those who knew of his ruthless reputation. We don't need to hurt them, Billy shot back, his voice rising above the tension. They deserve better. And I'm going to help them. He wasn't just speaking out. He ignited a flicker of hope in the hearts of the dogs surrounding him. Oh really? Sandro laughed, a dark, mocking sound that chilled the air. You think you can swoop in here and change things? These dogs belong to me. They're my currency, my trophies. You think I'll just let them go? His words dripped with arrogance and malice. Billy felt the weight of despair briefly crash over him. Could he truly make a difference? He caught a glimpse of Max, who looked back at him with trusting eyes, that same loyalty fueling Billy's resolve. You don't own them. You enslave them. Billy yelled, the fire in his voice igniting even more conviction. They're living beings, not property. Love and care matter more than trophies. Let me take them. For a split second, the men flanking Sandro looked as if they weren't certain how to proceed, caught between loyalty and the moment's unexpected shift. But Sandro appeared unfazed, his gaze narrowing. What if I choose to make an example out of you, kid? You think love's gonna save you here? The siren grew louder, carving through the tension, almost as if responding to Billy's plea. Billy steadied himself. This was it. Committing now meant there would be no turning back. Make your example, he declared, his voice steady. But know this, it will only show how weak you truly are. What you do today will echo louder than any fight. The world is changing, and there are more who will stand up. People care. The tension in the air pulsed thick as the dogs grew restless, barking in support. Driven by their united voices, Billy stepped forward, feeling the thrill of the moment push him on. Somewhere in the distance he could hear tires screech, a sound that stirred dread and anticipation. Did help arrive in time, or were they too late? Sandro turned to the men with a venomous grin. Let us make it interesting, boys. I think we may end up having some fun after all, but with this little hero in the way, let us show him how things really work. Billy's heart raced. This wasn't just a fight for mercy. It was the spark of an unimaginable battle between hope and despair. As the tension reached its peak, something, perhaps instinct, told him he had to act. Get ready, Max, he whispered, feeling the heat of determination swelling inside him. They were on the brink of something explosive. What would happen next? Could Billy rally the courage to face both the men and Sandro and turn the wheels of fate in their favor? Billy's heart thundered in his chest as the tension thickened around him. He could feel the weight of Sandro's eyes, a predator sizing up its prey. The dogs around him sensed the danger and let out low growls, their spirits soaring on the winds of his defiance. "Boys, let us have some fun with this," Sandro drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. He waved his hand dismissively at the men. "Get the dogs in line." Billy's stomach twisted. He had to think fast. The sirens were getting louder, the sound echoing through the alley like a lifeline. People were coming, maybe even the authorities, but would they arrive in time to stop the brutality that was about to unfold? "Max," he whispered urgently, "stay close. We're not backing down." Sandro's men closed in, sneering, their faces illuminated by the dim light of the alley. Billy could feel the heat radiating from their bodies, the foul smell of sweat and smoke mixing in the air. He didn't want to fight, he wanted to heal, to lift up the lost souls that had been denied a chance at love. And somehow he needed to find a way to make Sandro see that. Then he remembered the makeshift rescue plan he had been weaving in his mind. "You think you're tough, Sandro?" he shouted, his voice echoing down the alley. "You're just a coward who hides behind violence and fear. Real strength comes from love." For a moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Sandro's face. It was enough to give Billy hope. The tide could shift, he could feel it. He straightened his back, standing tall as he continued. "Your dogs, they need to know what it's like to be free, to be loved." That spark seemed to ignite a fire within the pack, the dogs echoing their solidarity with urgent barks. Billy couldn't afford to falter. He took a step closer to Sandro, defiance coursing through him. "Fight me instead. Let the dogs go, and I'll face you here and now." Sandro's laughter bounced off the walls, but Billy's challenge had struck a chord. "You're a brave little kid," he said with mock admiration. "But you don't know what you're asking for." The men behind him shuffled uneasily. It was a moment of hesitation, a flicker of challenge. Billy saw an opportunity. "What are you afraid of, Sandro? That I might actually win? Or are you worried that people will see the coward you are?" Sandro's expression darkened, and for a split second, the weight of his reputation cracked. Then, with a forceful laugh that echoed off the brick walls, he lunged forward, shoving Billy hard. Billy stumbled back, instinctively reaching for Max. "Get back!" One of Sandro's men shouted, readying themselves for a fight that they all dreaded. But Billy felt something deeper than fear, it was purpose. He stood his ground, refusing to yield, and then, just as chaos threatened to spiral, the blare of a siren cut through the night with sudden clarity. The headlights of vehicles swarmed through the alley. The light illuminated faces that had only known darkness. Hope surged within Billy, almost lifting him off the ground. "Don't let them take you," he yelled to the dogs, his eyes fierce with determination. "Stay with me." But just as the moment seemed poised for a breakthrough, Sandro's men began to scatter. Billy could sense the rush of adrenaline mixed with uncertainty. Would they flee? Would they fight? It was a precarious moment, and he knew he had to seize it. His heart raced as he turned to face Sandro one last time. Ready for anything. "This isn't over," Billy shouted defiantly. As the lights of the approaching vehicles grew closer, the possibility of rescue swirled in the air like a breath of fresh hope. But would it be enough? What could happen when they arrived? Would they be too late to stop the fight that loomed ahead? Billy's heart pounded, each beat echoing with a mix of fear and determination. The sight of the headlights piercing through the darkness sent waves of hope coursing through him. But as Sandro's men scattered like roaches caught in light, the danger wasn't over. He could still see that glimmer of malice flickering in Sandro's eyes. "Get them!" Sandro shouted, his voice sharp and commanding, cutting through the tension. But his men hesitated, glancing at the approaching vehicles with indecision written all over their faces. Billy seized the moment, stepping forward with Max at his side. "You're losing control, Sandro," he called out. Billy felt a nascent power rising within him, one that emanated from the deep-rooted love he held for these helpless dogs. "This is your chance to pull back. You really want to be remembered as the man who hurt a kid trying to save them? Doesn't he have to end like this?" Sandro's jaw tightened, the flicker of doubt on his face becoming buried under the weight of his pride. He took a step forward, anger boiling beneath the surface. "You have no idea who you're challenging." The sirens drew nearer, a haunting reminder of hope just around the corner. Billy felt the need to keep the momentum of hope alive for himself and the dogs. But I know who I am. I'm someone fighting for a better world, for love and healing. With every word, the dogs circled Billy, a protective barrier of warmth against the coldness surrounding them. They seemed to absorb his courage, their barks morphing from fearful growls to powerful howls of solidarity. Sandro's men exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of uncertainty now shifting in favor of Billy. He took a deep breath to steady his trembling resolve. You tell me who's tough, he challenged. The one who thrives on fear? Or the one who stands up for those who can't defend themselves? For a heartbeat, silence engulfed them all. Billy held his breath as he waited for Sandro's answer. Would he capitulate, or would this explode into chaos? Then suddenly the first of the squad cars pulled into the alley. Flashing lights became a beacon of hope, illuminating the tense standoff. What the hell is going on here? A uniformed officer barked as he leapt out, eyes scanning the scene with a mix of confusion and authority. Billy turned, relief crashing over him like waves. Officer! He cried, waving both hands. I need help. These dogs, their lives are at stake. In a flash, the officer had radioed for backup, and the situation escalated in a frenzy of lights and movement. The other officers poured out of their vehicles, their presence casting a long shadow over the alley. Sandro glanced from Billy to the approaching officers, then back to his men, his bravado faltering. Let us go, he hissed, retreating with a speed that took everyone by surprise. As Sandro and his men dispersed into the darkness, Billy's heart soared, tears of relief prickling at his eyes. Max leaned against him, nuzzling into his side, sensing the shift in energy. You did it, buddy, he whispered, though it felt like they had only just begun. But as the officers approached, he knew the fight for the dogs had only just transformed. The once looming threat overshadowed by the arrival of help now felt like a new battle beginning. He couldn't shake the feeling that Sandro wouldn't back down easily. Billy, what's going on here? One of the officers asked, lifting an eyebrow. They needed answers. But in the midst of it all, Billy felt a new flicker of fear amidst the victory. Before he could respond, he caught sight of shadows lingering down the alley, the remaining figures of Sandro's men, plotting their next move. Just how far would they go to reclaim their power? What happens next? He wondered, heart racing again. The challenges were far from over. Would he be able to withstand the storm that was brewing? Billy's heart continued to race. The excitement of victory ebbed into a swirling tide of anxiety. He couldn't shake the image of Sandro's men lurking in the shadows. Stay close, he whispered to Max, who looked up at him with trust in his big, brown eyes. The officer still awaited an explanation, her voice edged with urgency. Sir, what's your involvement in this? She pressed, arms crossed, ready for any signs of a threat. For a moment Billy hesitated. How could he explain the chaos of the night? Breathing deeply, he pointed toward the alley. They were hurting these dogs. I came here to help them. That man, Sandro, he stopped right there. Another officer drew near, his face stern. We need to secure the area first. Are there more people involved? Are you in danger? Billy felt a surge of frustration. No, you don't understand. I'm trying to save them. They need help. The dogs whined softly, their presence a reminder of Billy's purpose. The sympathy in the officer's eyes shifted but didn't fully land. They needed proof, a reason to act beyond the boys' desperate pleas. Suddenly, the unmistakable sound of gravel crunching under shoes echoed in the tension. Billy turned, fear spiking again. Out of the shadows stepped not just Sandro's men, but Sandro himself. His expression was a blend of rage and something more sinister, calculating. Thought you could win this one, huh? He sneered, his voice dripping with scorn. You think those lights and uniforms will protect you? I own this street. Billy felt Max tremble at his side, sensing the threat that loomed in the air. You don't own me. Or these dogs. Billy yelled, fueled by a newfound strength. Ready to stand his ground, Sandro raised a hand, a signal for his men to spread out. A cat-and-mouse game was about to unfold, and Billy's skin prickled with fear. He could sense the officers bracing for a conflict, but he needed to buy time. Please. We need those dogs to be safe. His voice trembled, a half-hearted plea now as he hoped they'd listen. One officer stepped up, glancing between Billy and the now encroaching figures. We need to get those dogs to safety, the officer declared. a hint of conviction breaking through the fear surrounding them. "Too late for heroes, kid," Sandro barked, and his men moved forward with ominous purpose. Billy's pulse thundered in his ears. He could see the officers preparing for confrontation, but he knew in his gut there was only one way to resolve this. "Max, stay close," Billy whispered urgently as he clutched the dog's collar tighter. Then it hit him, he could use the surrounding chaos to create a diversion. Billy squared his shoulders and shouted, "Hey! Over here!" as he dashed toward the nearby alley entrance. Knowing the dogs would follow in a flurry of panting excitement, Sandro's men hesitated, puzzled by Billy's sudden movement, giving the officers just the sheer second they needed to rush forward with authority. Lights from their squad cars danced wildly, illuminating the scene in flashes. Billy's heart raced, adrenaline fueling his next move. But he felt the weight of Sandro's eyes boring into him, full of dark promise. "Run!" he urged the dogs, their paws pounding as they sprang into action. But was it enough? With chaos erupting all around him, was he leading them into safety, or deeper into a trap? As Billy neared the alley, a thought struck like a lightning bolt. Would he be able to save the dogs and himself before Sandro made his next move? Billy sprinted into the alley, heart racing. Max followed closely, his breath coming in quick spurts, the sound echoing off the brick walls surrounding them. The dogs behind him, sensing freedom and urgency, picked up speed. Each paw that hit the ground felt like a heartbeat thundering in the night, a desperate attempt to escape the looming darkness. The alley was narrow, littered with forgotten objects, a rusty shopping cart, cracked pavement, and layers of old newspapers. Billy could hear the officers shouting behind him, the tension thickening in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. He darted left, pushing deeper into the maze of alleys, hoping to lose Sandro and his men in the shadows. "Keep it together, Max," he urged, glancing down at his furry companion. Max's eyes shone with determination. The bond they had formed in such a short time felt like a lifeline. Billy knew he had to protect not just the dogs but also the fragile spirit they shared. As they turned another corner, a sudden yelp broke Billy's focus. One of the smaller dogs, a scruffy little terrier with a patch over one eye, had tripped on a fragment of glass, yelping in shock and pain. Billy skidded to a halt, his gut twisting with concern. "Simon, buddy. We can't leave you." Max paused but looked over his shoulder, as if sensing the danger closing in. Billy knelt beside the little dog, gently examining its front paw. "You're okay, little fella," he whispered, trying to calm both the dog and himself. He wrapped his hands around the terrier, lifting it up and tucking it under his arm. Suddenly, the sounds of footsteps echoed ominously in the alley. Sandro's men had split up, searching for them like vultures circling prey. Billy felt a wave of fear wash over him, but he clung to the little terrier and pushed on. He couldn't let fear overcome him, not now. "Billy!" a familiar voice called from behind. It was Officer Curtis, the one who had shown a glimmer of empathy. Just as Billy thought they might be close to a safe escape, he felt the weight of reality crash down on him. He turned, hardly knowing what to expect. "Come on. This way." Officer Curtis beckoned emphatically, his voice rising above the chaos, teeth clenched in determination. "We need to get you and the dogs out of here." Billy felt hope flicker in his chest, but he quickly glanced back, spotting one of Sandro's men drawing closer. "They're right behind us," he shouted, panic rising again. "We can't stop. Just trust me," Curtis shouted in reply. "I have a plan." Without thinking, Billy took off down the alley, trusting Curtis's words. They darted from one alley to another, zigzagging like fireflies lost in the dark until suddenly, they burst into a small, hidden courtyard surrounded by old brick buildings. Panting heavily, Billy looked around, scanning for escape routes. The courtyard was quiet, maybe too quiet, but at least they had a moment to breathe. The sound of distant sirens offered a sliver of hope, but it was not enough to silence the reality of the danger still lurking. Officer Curtis quickly motioned for them to huddle together with the dogs. "We can't stay here long," he panted, glancing at the surrounding walls. "If Sandro finds us before he could finish..." A thunderous crash broke the silence, sending them into a panic. Sandro's men had found them. Just outside the courtyard, shadows swooped like a storm, and for the briefest moment, all Billy could feel was a cold wave of dread washing over him. "Quick! Back!" Curtis urged, trying to shove them toward an old wooden door on the far side. We have to get out. Time seemed to freeze as the door rattled against its frame. Was there still a way out? Would they be cornered, trapped in this moment of fear? Or was it possible to find safety, and maybe even turn the tide of this night into something better? Billy's heart raced in his chest, battling both fear and hope as he clutched the little terrier against him. He could feel desperation rising in every fiber of his being. Would they escape this ordeal? Or would Sandro's shadow snatch them from the brink of safety? The answers loomed just beyond the door, waiting for them in the dark. Billy pressed against the old wooden door, feeling the splintered edges biting into his palms. Officer Curtis stood beside him, tension coiling in the air as they listened intently to the chaos outside. The muffled voices of Sandro's men echoed hauntingly as they called out, growing ever closer. Billy, focus, Curtis urged, his voice low but urgent. When I say go, we push through that door and make a run for it. Nervously glancing down at the little terrier cradled against his chest, Billy felt both its tiny heart racing and his own. In that moment, a fierce protectiveness surged through him. He couldn't lose this little dog. Not after everything they'd already endured together. All right, Curtis said suddenly, pushing against the door with one hand. Go. Billy didn't hesitate. He kicked the door open and bolted out into the cold night air. The moment they stepped into the open, panic swelled like a wave crashing around them. They sprinted across the courtyard, leaving the twisted shadows behind as they rushed toward an alley on the far side. Over there, Curtis shouted, pointing to a gap between two buildings. We can hide there. The alley was even darker, a tight squeeze that felt like slipping between the cracks of a nightmare. As they pushed through, Billy felt the terrier tremble slightly against him, but it held its ground, trusting him. Just as they reached the other side, a blade of light sliced through the inky darkness. Billy froze, instincts screaming at him to meld into the shadows. An officer emerged from the glow of an overhead streetlight, a sudden reminder that not everyone was an enemy. Officer! Curtis yelled, waving his arms wildly. Over here. The officer scanned the alley, eyes widening as he saw the ragtag group of pursuers. Get to safety. I'll hold them off. He shouted, hand resting on his belt. Thank you. Billy whispered, heart pounding, not entirely sure whether they had time to trust this stranger. But the faint hope in the officer's voice sparked something in him. They turned and dashed deeper into the maze of alleyways, the lantern light fading behind them. We're not safe yet, Curtis muttered, stealing glances over his shoulder. We have to find a way out of the city. Billy nodded, knowing the urgency of their position. Thoughts raced through his mind like leaves caught in a gale. If they could get to the outskirts, they might find a way to regroup, maybe even phone for help. But that was a long shot, and with every step, fear lurked just behind them. Suddenly, they stumbled upon an old fence, sagging and battered, almost hidden in the shadows. We can climb over, Curtis said, determination blazing in his eyes. It leads to the other side of town. Can you make it, little buddy? Billy whispered to the terrier, who glanced up at him, tail wagging slightly as if sensing Billy's resolve. With a gentle lift, Billy hoisted the terrier over the fence before grabbing onto the creaky wooden slats and pulling himself up. The moment he touched the ground on the other side, he turned back to catch Curtis, who was just a moment behind. Together they regained their breaths for just a second. Let us keep moving, Curtis urged, the urgency still in his voice. As they stumbled forward into the shadows, the weight of despair still loomed. The idea of safety danced just out of reach, with each turn pushing them closer to uncertainty and hope. As they ran, Billy couldn't shake the feeling that the night was still full of surprises, that maybe they weren't just running from Sandro but running towards something bigger. But as they moved through another narrow alley, the echo of footsteps trailing behind them drew near, and a chilling realization sank in. Would they ever truly escape? As they rounded one more corner, the adrenaline propelled them forward. But the night still held secrets that could change everything. What awaited them in the unknown? Would they find refuge or face the storm sweeping in behind them? Billy's heart thundered as he and Officer Curtis raced through the deserted streets of Willow Creek. Every corner turned a sting of panic swelling inside him. They almost slipped away, shadows blending into the night's dream, but uncertainty chased them like a fierce wind. Around him, the soft pitter-patter of paws echoed in harmony with his thumping heart. Stay close, Max, Billy urged, glancing down at the little terrier cradled tightly in his arms. The tiny creature nestled against him, providing an anchor of warmth and courage as they moved deeper into the dark maze of alleyways. Suddenly, a harsh voice broke through the stillness. There they are. Billy's pulse quickened as he froze in his tracks. Sandro's men emerged from the dark like a pack of wolves, eyes glinting with malice, intent on reclaiming their hold. Panic surged, a wave of terror crashing down on him. Run! Officer Curtis bellowed, breaking the spell. They pushed forward, urgency fueling their steps, tearing past trash cans and flickering streetlights, desperately searching for a way out. With each breath, Billy felt that lingering hope distilling into determination. They had to find a place to hide. They had to outrun the darkness. Head for the park. Curtis pointed ahead, where the trees loomed tall and inviting, offering a possibility for sanctuary. As they veered toward the lush green, an unexpected rustle sent a chill down Billy's spine. It echoed with a murmur of rusted leaves, an eerie reminder of their relentless pursuers. Slowing to a jog, Curtis led them through a thicket, suddenly bursting out into the open park. The moon's gentle light painted the ground silver, a beacon of safety against the backdrop of danger looming around them. Instinct urged Billy to stop to catch his breath, but the reality that they were still not safe snapped him into focus. We need a plan, he whispered, glancing at Curtis, who nodded, grasping the urgency of the moment. If we can get to the pavilion, we can hold up there until backup arrives, Curtis said, determination etched on his face. Together they sprinted toward the wooden structure, a familiar place of joy that now felt like a fortress under siege. As they approached, Billy felt hope surge again. They reached the base of the pavilion, pouring their energy into one last dash for safety. They slipped inside, breathing heavily, hearts pounding like drums in their chests. For a moment, silence enveloped them, an intimate cocoon filled with the memories of laughter that once echoed in the vicinity. Billy sank against a wall, protective instinct still clinging to the little terrier as the weight of reality washed over him. Then the jarring sound of footsteps shattered the quiet night. They're here, Curtis hissed, peering through the gaps in the boards. Billy's pulse quickened. What do we do? He murmured, feeling the weight of the world pressing down once more. We hold our ground, Curtis said firmly, eyes glinting with resolve. And we wait for backup. Seconds felt like hours as they huddled in the shadows, ears straining to catch any sound, every creak making them jump. They can't hurt us here, Billy reminded himself, squeezing Max tighter in his arms. Not while we're together. Suddenly, harsh voices cut through the night air, drawing closer. We'll find them. There's nowhere to run. Sandro's voice was like a snake slithering through the darkness, laced with danger and venomous intent. Just stay calm, Curtis urged, his demeanor steady even as tension gripped the air. They'll have to come in eventually. A wave of uncertainty washed over Billy. Were they truly safe? Would help arrive in time? But then he glanced down at Max, whose big eyes were wide with love and trust. That unwavering loyalty bolstered his spirit. We can't let them take you, he whispered, knowing that their bond was stronger than any fear that sought to tear them apart. And that moment of silence, clarity struck like a bolt of lightning. Wait, Billy exclaimed, determination filling his voice. I have an idea. What is it? Curtis looked at him, curiosity sparking in his eyes. We could create a distraction. I can call out a different way. They might think we run a different direction. Excitement thrummed through Billy's veins. All fear seemed to vanish, replaced by the compelling drive to protect those he loved. Get ready, he said, standing tall as he prepared himself. Taking a deep breath, he raised his voice. Hey, over here. If you want a challenge, come face me. His words echoed through the night air, daring the men to step closer. He could hear them muttering, the sound of footsteps darting toward him. Panic surged again, but Billy resolved to stand firm. They had to believe this could work. As Sandro and his men poured into the pavilion, they faced Billy, all confusion written across their faces. For a moment time seemed to stand still. Billy, what are you doing? One of the men shouted, flabbergasted at the boy's audacity. Just proving that love always wins, Billy declared, the sunlight of possibility flooding through him. You can't own us. You don't own these dogs. With resolve flushing his veins, he turned, watching as Max trotted bravely alongside him, a symbol of hope. "Let the dogs go," he shouted, raising his chin defiantly as the men moved closer. "This ends here." The sight of the little terrier ignited a singular truth. Love had the power to illuminate even the darkest nights. But just as the tension peaked, blaring sirens resonated in the air, cutting through the chaos like a knife. "This is it," Curtis exclaimed, adrenaline surging, the arrival of help shining brighter than 1,000 suns. In that moment, while fear still lingered, Billy felt an insurmountable strength rising from within. He was ready to fight for the lives he loved, knowing they were all worth protecting. Together against all odds, they stood side by side, ready to embrace the overwhelming change the night would bring. Emboldened, Billy declared, "We're taking back what's ours. Love will conquer this darkness." As the headlights flashed around the corner, illuminating heroism amidst despair, his voice echoed through the night, a rallying cry that marked the dawn of a new beginning. Join us in spreading the power of hope and transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that dive deep into the triumphs of the heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, showing that you care about these incredible journeys. We want to hear you. Comment your reactions and feelings about this inspiring ending, sharing your thoughts about the resilience within us all. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support, and only true fans understand how vital it is to back this community with actions.